Hi, everyone. Welcome to Nechama Comfort's Comfort Conversation. I am Reva Judas, the founder and director of Nechama Comfort. And this month, the month of June, we are focusing on the men, the fathers, the husbands, the partners who equally experience pregnancy and infant loss and go through the same grief journey as everyone else. Thank God over the years, the stigma of how a man is macho and a man can't show his emotions and men won't talk about their feelings has changed. We see in media athletes and entertainers talking about their losses, their grief, especially with pregnancy and infant loss. I see myself, the community changing, people talking about it. Many more men have joined our organization, and we have a monthly male support group to reach out to them, to help them, to give them the guidance and tools. But we still get men inquiring. I don't feel comfortable sharing my feelings. I have to be there for my wife. All of these important things. And we said, we're here for you, but we want to publicly advertise that. So Sunday on June 16th is Father's Day. I think in the States, I'm thinking other places as well. So we said, let's dedicate this month to talk about the men. The men experience the loss and the grief journey, and also to give some hope and some ideas of how you can really put this into your life and to move through it. Today I have as my guest, I'm so looking forward to this conversation, Rabbi Asher Resnick. We've been speaking about it for a while. It's taken a little time because Asher lives in Jerusalem in Beit Shemesh, so the time difference is still difficult. But we are recording this and we're going to be showing it. But we will give you the information where to reach out to Asher to be able to talk to him, to be in touch with him, any questions. And I know you're going to find it as fascinating as I do when I first spoke to him. And of course, you can reach out to us as well. We'll give you that information in a moment. So Rabbi Asher Resnick grew up in LA. He was not affiliated with Judaism at all. And he'll tell you at the age of 22 how he said he just bumped into Judaism. And he'll tell you where he works now, why the wonderful book he has written, and why we're so looking forward to him having him as a guest. So welcome, Asher.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here and happy to speak to your group. You're doing so much amazing work with.
Thank you. So tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah. So as you said, I grew up in LA. I was completely unaffiliated. I was always, I probably would have said I'm proud to be Jewish my whole life, although I would have had no idea why or what that would mean. But I always knew I was Jewish. I have a good feeling about that. And when I finished college, I went to UCLA. When I finished college, I was planning to be a high school math teacher. I got a credential as a high school math teacher. But before I started to work as a math teacher, I wanted to do what was very common in those days, travel around the world. So I took a backpacking trip through Europe, and I ended up in Israel. And while I was in Israel and while I was in Jerusalem, I bumped into Judaism, Eshet Torah. It's a whole story how that happened, but basically I was at the Western Wall, Kotel, and um I put tefillin on for the first time in my life then, and then I was roaming around looking for a friend of mine when in my credential program in UCLA, we were discussing our plans at the end of the year, and one of the people says he's planning to go to Jerusalem to study to be a rabbi, which seemed like a totally wacko thing to me. But at that point, I was already planning my trip to Israel, and after Europe. So I said, okay, I'll try and look you up. Never occurred to me to ask him where he was going to be studying. I guess I figured, how many places could there be to be a rabbi in Jerusalem? So anyway, when I was after my traumatic experience at the hotel, putting tefillin on for the first time, I feel like a complete idiot because I didn't know how to say the blessings. I then was roaming around the Jewish quarter, and I saw a sign that said it was a white sign with black writing. It said Yeshiva something or other, and then below it said Rabbinical Academy. So I figured, oh, that's probably where my friend is studying. Had I not seen Rabbinical Academy, I would never know what the word yeshiva meant. So I started looking for it, and pretty quickly I've lost the track of the sign. I forgot the name of the yeshiva. I was roaming around, asking people with my backpack, "Where's the yeshiva?" And someone took me to Aish Torah, and I walked into the office, and I told them my friend's name. He was not studying there. They looked at the roster; he was not there. I turned to leave, and the secretary there very quickly says to me, "You know, maybe you should talk to one of the rabbis. Maybe he could help you." So they showed me into Rev Noach's office, Rev Noach Weinberg. And as I often tell people, he was the first religious Jew in my entire life I ever spoke to. And we spoke for about an hour. He was a very fascinating person. And by the time we finished talking, I decided it would make sense to come for a few days to study. And I did shortly after that. And then I was very fascinated. And a few days became a few months. And then I started to learn there full time. And then I became a teacher there. And basically, I've been affiliated with Aish Torah on and off for ever since then, for a number of many decades.
Wow. Can you tell us, explain to, I know what Ashes Torah is, but I love it. Can you tell us what is Ashes Torah?
Yeah, Aish Torah is um, it's an educational organization that's trying to show Jews that Judaism is meaningful and that they can connect with it on whatever level they are interested in connecting with it. If they want to learn a little bit, they can learn a little bit. Aish.com, which is the website from the yeshiva, is quite a popular website in the Jewish world. And there's articles on all different kinds of topics. And basically, it's trying to show Jews who also, as I felt, a certain Jewish pride, give you some idea of what that pride's all about, and trying to get people to see the meaning and the significance in being Jewish.
So it is an amazing place. And what's great, it's sort of our philosophy here at Nechama Comfort that we welcome all Jews of any affiliation. And I think that what we're going to talk about today, that what's universal is unfortunately trauma and grief, but also how to put this into our lives
Yeah,
and really reaching people on their own level. And I'll just give a little plug too that Dan Hazone, who is also works at AISH, is on one of our board members and one of our families that have gone through the Chama Comfort. So when you're in Israel, we'll talk about that too. You can look up Rabbi Resnick, and he will be glad to give you a tour of this really amazing place. So thank you. Can I address you as Asher or Rabbi? What would you like?
Usher sounds great.
Asher's good. Okay. Okay, so thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself. Um, I want to share with you what brought you here to our comfort conversation today.
Okay,
Tell us a little bit about your journey and your
right.
personal life and your grief journey.
Okay, so after I learned for quite a number of years in Aish Torah, I was interested in going to the States and try to be a teacher. I was always interested in teaching. So we ended up going to San Francisco, and we were there for 2 years. While I was there, I was actually working for a very unusual organization, a day school that did all kinds of classes for doctors and lawyers all throughout the Bay Area. That was my main role. But while I was there, I decided to do some outreach classes myself. Whoever wants to come in can come in, no charge, no, just walk in my house. This was on Tuesday nights. So I was doing different topics, and I decided to get some more serious topics. So I decided to do a two-part series called I think when bad things happen to good people. Part one was called understanding it intellectually, and part two was called dealing with it emotionally.
Mhm.
So I did part one, which was I know exactly when it was. It was January 2nd, 1990. I did part one, and then um I was planning to do part two on January 9th, 1990, Tuesday night. That Tuesday afternoon, before the second class called Dealing with It Emotionally, we got the diagnosis that our eldest daughter, Rivka, had leukemia. So, in addition to the tremendous trauma of hearing that, it was very striking. The juxtaposition was very striking. And I was planning to teach that night,
Wow.
dealing with it emotionally, and that's what we were dealing with. And I was in the hospital that night, dealing with it emotionally, obviously. And so I thought a lot about why that is, what that juxtaposition was all about. And one of the messages that I got from it was how important it is to share a Jewish perspective on trauma and these kinds of important ideas. As you said, these are universal ideas.
Mm.
Every human being goes through challenges, and of course, child loss or pregnancy loss on whatever level is amongst the greatest traumas that people go through. So having gone through that, so anyway, just give a little background then. So we got initially a very positive diagnosis, very positive prognosis, I should say.
Right.
And and she had about 2 years of treatment, all outpatient, and everything seemed to go fine. She was in remission, everything was great. And then in the years that followed, we came back to Israel, and shortly before her bat mitzvah, she was 2 years old when we had the diagnosis.
Oh, I was going to ask you that. She
Before,
was two.
Shortly before
Wow.
her bat mitzvah, so almost 10 years later, she relapsed. Uh, and which was very unusual to be in remission for that long, of almost 10 years, and then to have the disease come back is extremely unusual.
Um,
But that's what happened to us. So that was very, very traumatic. And we dealt with it in a very intense way over 3 years. We were all back in Israel. That included 4 separate bone marrow transplants.
wow.
Each one is a huge undertaking. And and then from the side effects of the fourth one, she passed away. And she was 14 and a half.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, so it was very,
Sorry.
so anyway, so that was okay. That was, it was really a long process because we were dealing with the issues of trauma even during her treatment, of course. But took it to a whole new level when she passed away. So what I decided to do was I started to speak to research topics and present them on her yard site, the anniversary of her passing. And after a number of years, I created a website called jewishclarity.com. And I started to post these articles in these collections of Jewish sources about different topics on the website. Things like how do you deal with a young person passing away? How do you deal with anger at God? How do you interpret messages within trauma? How do you understand the concept of nechama? Actually, I have an article on the topic of nechama. So I started to post them on my website. And after a number of years, I decided to try to actually take them all and make a book out of them, which I did. And then the book was published about 2 years ago. The book is called Pain is a Reality, Suffering is a Choice. And I tell people the main word in that title, the emphasis in that title on the main word is the word choice. That
That's our big word here at Nefama Comfort. Choice.
yes, yes, and it's a
Big,
huge
yeah,
point in life.
it's an important word. Yeah.
Yeah, and Judaism is very, very big on the concept of choice, on free will. And and I saw that as traumatic as it was that we went through, we had choices. We could have just fallen apart,
right.
but we tried as much as we could to deal with things, to grow from it. It's an ongoing process. I wouldn't say I'm done with my journey. It's an ongoing process.
Mhm.
My wife deals with it her way. I deal with it my way. She started amazing different chesed, kindness projects to help people, and I was doing more teaching. And um, but the main message I would tell people is there are choices to make. And one of the things I quote in my book a few times is Viktor Frankl, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and his amazing book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mhm.
And if he could write about the time he spent in Auschwitz, that there were choices to make there, that means you can make choices anywhere. We probably couldn't say that, but he could say it. He was there, and he made choices there. And he said people made choices there. So that's a key point. We can make choices, and based on those choices, we can grow in some way. We can we can live our lives in a normal way as much as we possibly can. And um, and I certainly hope that people will be able to use choice to to live their lives in as positive a way as they possibly can.
First of all, I'm so sorry for the loss of your daughter. Well, her name was Rivka?
Yeah, Rivka, yeah.
Rivka. And how long ago was that?
It was over 20 years ago.
Over 20 years ago. Wow. And when you talk about it, it seems like yesterday. When you,
Yeah, it doesn't, it's always fresh.
yeah, yeah,
I,
that's
I tell
a,
people that there hasn't been a single day, what I'm going to say now might sound like an exaggeration. I'm telling you a literal statement. There has not been a single day since her passing. I haven't thought about her multiple times.
I think our audience watching this, our clients for sure, will feel that way. I know my son who passed away 37 years ago, and he lived for 12 hours. Every day he's in my life. Either
Yeah,
in a, I always say the story, and it sounds frivolous, but it's true, if I get a good parking space at the Nordstrom sale, and I'll say, thank you, Pesach, when my kids were younger, they'd say, what do you mean? It's God. I go, God's not looking for my good parking space. But I think Pesach's looking out for us because he knows we need to get a good parking space. So even in that way, and there's always something, oh, I wish you could see this. And I think everyone will share that they're a part of your life. And that's really what we tell people, how to make them as a part of your life.
right. And I have one chapter in my book which is specifically on the concept of maintaining a relationship with your deceased loved ones, which I believe very strongly myself, experientially, and from Jewish sources, is a real possibility to have a relationship with your deceased loved one, even though you're in one world and they're in the other world.
Can you share an idea or two about
Well,
that?
this is the idea that's in Hebrew called Le'ilui Nishama, or the elevation of the deceased, and I'm sorry, the elevation of the soul.
Right.
And basically, whatever you do, whatever positive you do, can be dedicated as a merit for the person who passed away. People think specifically about things like saying Kaddish or prayers, which are obviously true. But you can do anything. You can do a kindness. You can do some project. Whatever you do, if you think ahead of time, I'm doing this for the merit of this person, then that is a merit for that person. So you're giving to that person. And I'm sure that many of the inspirations that I've had to do things over the years came from my daughter. So in that way, she's giving to me.
It's so beautiful. So,
And it
and,
keeps it very tangible. That's I don't know how a person could possibly deal with the loss of a child or a lot of pregnancy without an awareness of the world to come.
yeah, that's, we see, I always say nobody has come down yet to share with us what it's like up there. But if we believe that they're in a place, we hope it's a better place, and that we do things. And I know some of our families, they create these campaigns. We call them branch campaigns in memory of their children, of their babies. And they create unbelievable uh, ideas that they put into fruition. We have somebody who has funding for education and awareness. We have some funding that wants to make memory boxes in the hospitals in Israel. So people do, and then I tell them it doesn't have to be in such a grandiose idea, like you said, which I love. Your everyday, what you're doing
Anything,
every day.
anything.
Yeah,
There was a beautiful idea I heard from Rabbi Zev Leff many years ago. He said, what's the question people ask when a trauma happens? They ask why. Hebrew, lama.
right,
He said that's an important question to ask. But there's another question you could ask, which is not lama, but lama. For what? Lama is focusing on the past, and lama is focusing on the future. So we search for that lama, why, and we may get clarity. I mean, we may not get a full clarity.
right.
We can always have an answer to lama. What can I do now? For what? What can I move forward? And I think an amazing example of that is, I would guess, probably the majority of the amazing organizations that do so much kindness throughout the Jewish world and probably the non-Jewish world, the entire world, come from people who went through a trauma. And they're
Yeah,
now trying in some way to make the world a better place in memory of that person, with the inspiration of that person. So all these amazing things. I mean, your organization, of course, is like that, but so many organizations like that. That's all Lama for what? Moving forward in a very beautiful, positive way.
yeah. People will say to me, and nobody says anything intentionally that could hurt somebody, but sometimes it comes out. They'll say, now you know why your son had to pass away. And I go, no,
Oh
I
my
have
gosh.
no idea why he had to pass away. You can relate to that.
Oh my gosh.
You can
Yeah,
relate to
no,
that. And they
no, I
don't
don't
do it, and
know.
I
I can
understand what they
say
mean.
that this is happening now, and I'm
Right,
doing this.
right.
I don't talk about, oh, now I got it clear.
Because
No,
you
and
don't.
no,
I'm
no, I
just
don't.
doing this because, like, I think you don't want people, you want to help people go through something. And it's sort of like we joined the club we never wanted to join, but you're a lifetime member. So it's sort of just helping and giving back. And I think that's amazing what you were able to do.
People like very nice, tidy answers for things,
Right.
but life is complicated that way. It's not so simple. So, no, that's for sure now. We can talk about, thank God, you do a lot of amazing things, and I try to do a lot of good things.
You do. You do.
That's it. I bet.
But we can't fix it. I always tell people, we live in a world of fixing. We go to the Google and we want to fix it, but we can't fix it. We could just be there to help. And I think what how you
Correct.
did that really shows. How do you have other children?
Yes, Maura, thank God I do. She was my oldest,
She was your oldest. Okay.
but I have three other girls, and I have my youngest is a boy.
No.
And thank goodness they're all. In fact, my son just got married. He was the last one to get married, and
Oh
thank God
my
he just
Lord,
got married
no.
recently.
Very.
And thank goodness we have grandchildren, and it's very special. We're very blessed that way.
One question I get a lot, if you could let us know too. So were your other children born yet when you got the diagnosis?
Yeah, they were all born. In fact, my son, who's the youngest, he was actually her bone marrow donor.
Wow,
He was 2 years old at the time.
wow.
He was the only one that was a complete match. It's like
Uh-huh.
a certain terminology
Right.
in bone marrow transplants.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was the perfect. He was the right match. So he
Wow.
was the donor for her.
Wow.
So he was 2 years old.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. So like I said, she was the oldest. The other ones were various ages in between.
So they
And
weren't born when she got the first diagnosis. They weren't born, right? Because she was two, you said.
right, actually, my next girl was a baby then.
Oh, it must have so hard. So, you know, so your children were older. Well, I guess not your son. Your son really, did he understand what was going on?
No, he for sure didn't, but the other ones
Right.
did.
The
The other
others
ones,
did.
some was left. One was 13. In fact, one became bat mitzvah during Shiva,
Oh, wow. Wow.
and uh,
Wow.
and then that was the second. That was the third one, and then the next one was like 8th, but she's a very mature girl. So they definitely were aware of it. And I mean, of course, my wife basically lived in the hospital most of the time for about 3 years.
Wow,
It
wow.
was a huge impact on their life.
And how did
Um,
that, so, this is a little different because it's an infant loss, but a question is, I always tell the family, you need to be open with your children on their level. So if the children
yes,
are older, you talk to them more, if they're younger. And I always tell families in general, when I do my community speaking, always talk to your children about loss and grief, even if it's a grandparent, even if it's, the Parsha stories. I say to them, we talk about Noah right away, and the whole world got destroyed, and there was a flood. And we teach that to our little kids, that's huge.
right,
And we sing songs, and it's not just rainbows, but we say how God destroyed the earth. So I think that they can understand it, but they always want to know, um, will it affect the family? And I think you made a great point that obviously they shared with it. Obviously, they had to sit Shiva, and your daughter had a bat mitzvah, and your wife wasn't around. Um, did you, as the father, have to take on more responsibility
for
because
sure.
your wife was there?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, because
Yeah.
she was gone. I mean, we took turns being there in the hospital for Shabbos. Sometimes I was there. The truth is, I was probably in the hospital more than my wife because that was her break from the hospital because she was there during the week.
Uh-huh.
And then and this way also she could reconnect with the kids.
Right.
And I
Right.
mean, that's a whole juggle of trying to help your daughter and also help your other kids and
Right.
make sure they shouldn't feel neglected. I mean, I'm blessed with an amazing wife. So so she did an incredible job to make sure that they were part of her life and they felt that they were part of her life, even during the time that she was in the hospital so much.
Right.
But
Right.
for sure, my whole life was revolving around this.
Uh-huh. Did you feel that you got the same, I don't know, attention? Were people focusing on your wife more, the children more, or were you getting support and community support that you needed?
Yeah, I felt like yeah, I had friends that, yeah, I always felt we did have an amazing support system, that's for sure. No,
Which is key.
it's key. I mean, first, on just a practical level, meals, because my wife is away all the time,
Right.
meals and helping so much. People were so generous and so wanting to help in any way they possibly could. So it was incredible. And but I did feel that I was able to get whatever I needed, support wise, logistically, everything.
Were you able to ask for what you needed? Did you feel that was
Yeah,
important? I mean, I know I see you're a very open person, which is good.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I did.
but I think that's key too, that you have to tell people what you need.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, no, I did. I would ask people, and sometimes it's a bit awkward because you don't like to ask favors all the time. But when you're in this situation, you just do
Right.
because I needed to. So we did. And I asked people for help, and I asked, obviously, you asked the right person who's appropriate to give that help. But for
Right.
sure, I did ask that help, and people were very helped, very much happy to respond as much as they could.
And after the loss of your child, and after the funeral and the shiva and everything else, what was it like for you and your wife and your family to get back into, as we call it, the new normal? Was that
Yeah, so for us, like I said, my wife was away for over 3 years, basically, or
wow?
me. So we finally were back to a somewhat regular situation. We're both home for Shabbos, which is amazing.
Right.
Um, the first year was very, very difficult. The first year, everything was difficult. Every holiday was a tremendous challenge. Every celebration that we got invitations to was a tremendous challenge. And it's what's one of the ironies that when happy times are around you, when there's positive times, those are the times you feel more disconnected from everyone else. So it sounds strange when you get a wedding invitation that it
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
funny
I mean, we
dynamic.
hear that a lot from our clients, a
Yeah.
lot.
So okay,
Yeah.
I felt that a
Yes.
lot.
Yes.
It took me a long time before I was able to go to a wedding, for example. And so the first year was particularly challenging, and the second year was challenging. And I heard an analogy during the Shiva, which I found very helpful. Someone said, when you lose a child, it's like an amputation, which means to say you never forget you're missing that limb. But at the same time, you can still live a good life.
Right,
You're missing that limb. I happen to know someone who had an amputation.
right,
He
right,
could still laugh at a joke.
right.
You still could be
Such a
have a
good
good life.
analogy. Yeah,
But he never forgot that he was missing a limb,
right.
missing part of his leg. He never forgot that. I never forget I'm missing my daughter. Never. But we can still enjoy life. We can still laugh at a joke. We can still celebrate things with people. But you're just aware you're doing it without that piece.
I love that analogy. That's great. No, we share that. We say, it has to become about you, the two of you after the loss, and which most people are not selfish. And we explain, the person's wedding, you grew up wedding, will still go on if you're not able to be there.
Oh,
They're
that's
still
for
gonna
sure.
have the best wedding. They're gonna miss you, but it's not gonna affect. And you really have to understand, and I think we share that with the extended family. I think that they don't necessarily always understand too, the grandparents, the different siblings, oh, you're not gonna be at the celebration, or you're not gonna, and we try to tell them that it is difficult. And we try to explain that to them. I'm glad you shared that because it is a life cycle, and all the life cycles for whatever is, it's going to remind you of it.
Right. I'll tell you another piece of advice I got during Shiva, which was also very helpful, was from a woman who had lost a daughter. So she was particularly able to give me some insight. So she said that she and her husband are very different and they mourned differently.
Hmm.
And she said everyone has to mourn in the way that's helpful for them. It may sound such an obvious point, but it's a very liberating point. Everyone has their own situation. And I'm sure that just like I have my own way of dealing with things than my wife, we both have our own way of dealing with it with our kids. They all have their own thing. And it's so important to allow people to mourn in the way that they want to mourn. Some people will mourn in a much more private way, and you won't see it. And don't feel that in any way that means that they're lacking in any sensitivity to the issue. They're doing it their way, and I'm doing my way. And it's so important people you can't impose your expectations on someone else.
Right.
Everyone does it their own way, and that's the way it has to be, and that's the way it's healthy.
That is such an important point.
It
We always
sounds obvious as I'm saying it, but it's
You
really
know
not
what?
so
It sounds
obvious.
obvious, but it's not obvious. And it's also not obvious, you were, newly married, meaning you weren't this old, experienced married couple when you found out about the diagnosis, going through these things. You had no reference necessarily what to do. And
Zero.
right, and I always say the most important thing between the husband and wife is communication, because how they're brought up, which you said, everybody's personality is different when it comes to grief and loss.
Yeah,
That is really, really important. Do you,
right.
um, what do you, so going through your life, do you feel that you and your wife are on the same page? Are you on a different page when it comes to
Oh,
looking
in many
back?
ways we're the same. One thing
Right.
we both agreed on, we both do a lot. We talk about our daughter.
Hmm.
We didn't want to ever have a situation where no one can say her name.
Right.
We
Amazing.
speak about her
Right.
not in sad terms. We'll tell a story. My wife will say, "Oh yeah, she was like this when she was a baby, and she was
Right.
this personality." We talk about she's part of our
Amazing.
life. She's always part of our family.
Amazing.
I mean, of course, obviously, of course, my wife lights candles for all the kids, and she always lights for her. That's
Yep.
obvious. There's
Yep.
no nothing, no kiddish in that.
No.
She's part of our life. She's a part of our life, she's a part of our family. We speak about her. And I think because we're comfortable speaking about her, our kids are comfortable speaking about her. It never
Or,
became a scary, taboo topic.
right, that's so important to know. Especially your young son, right? How old was he when she passed away?
He was like 5.
Uh-huh. So he has some memories, but
A little
a
bit,
little
not
bit,
much.
right. And you know, they're married, they went on to have children. You know, I always say that about my family too, that you know, they may go to therapy, but it's not because I scarred them of this, you know, that's not the
Right.
reason. That they were also able to go on with their their children and knowing and talking about it and understanding. And I think it's important to, I see a change in the next generation. I don't know if you do that, and you're teaching and you're with, you know, young adults, that they are accepting. They do know that you have to be resilient and that you life is not just it doesn't just go the way we planned it. And we
That's
hope
certainly true.
to.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, yeah, right. Because it does, most of our lives don't. I don't think anybody's life does.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
And I think now with COVID, we learned, now with the war in Israel and the situation in the world, I think we're all living that too.
yeah,
We're all living that as well. Do you feel, I'm trying to think how many years ago, you were living in Israel when she passed away.
yeah.
So, you know, one of the questions, especially now that we get from our client, we have clients in Israel and, you know, just around the world, they feel, you know, maybe their loss, I mean, it's pregnancy, it's a loss, or even a daughter, compared to what people are going through in the world, well, that has to be worse. How can they share their grief and loss when, you know, people are getting killed and there's terrorist attacks and there's everything else going on? And
You
we
know,
try to explain to, yeah, what
I
would
don't
you tell
compare.
them?
I never want to compare grief.
Right,
So, you know, is is this worse or this worse? We just I just heard, I went to a shiva just a few days ago. Someone's son was shot and killed. So
mm,
in 1 second, from 1 second to the next second, he was gone. Is that better or worse than we went through? I've got no idea. Everyone has their own situation, and
yeah,
everyone needs to mourn with their own situation. And and of course, the country is going through a tremendous trauma right now. But that should never mm, uh, should never discourage us or limit us from our own important journey that we need to go through.
I, I agree. I just, it's sometimes
Yeah,
it's
that's a
such
very
a,
important
like,
point.
yeah,
I always feel
so
that way.
important, especially
I'm not
now.
comparing my loss to
Right?
someone who
It's
sold your son.
everybody's right. And I say that, you know, because we have clients who've had miscarriage and we've had clients that have had babies pass away of sins. I said, we're all here because we're mourning the loss of a child and a child that lives in your hopes and dreams. And even your daughter who was 14, it's her
Right.
hopes and dreams too. It's your
Sure.
hopes
Yeah,
and dreams.
definitely.
So I think that that is such an important point. What advice coming from a man who's gone through this and who is really, I hope the audience sees how remarkable you are because that you're able to share this and really understand what people are going through. What advice would you give the men in this world about, you know, what, we give them, we tell them you have permission to grieve. We want you to be true to yourself. But what coming from you, from the man who went through a trauma, a loss, what advice
Because,
would you share for them?
like I said earlier, the key word in my book title is the word choice. So there's choices to make. Um, it's something which is very, there's nothing wrong with sharing emotions, that's for sure. I I try to be very open with my emotions as much as I can, and my kids see that. I'm not embarrassed to cry about my daughter, and they see that, and that it just they see the love that I have for my daughter, and they know that I have the love for them, and
Right,
it's an expression of that. So I would say one piece of advice I would say is is having a close friend that you can particularly open up with and share is very important. I'm very blessed. I have a very close friend for decades now, and he's the person that I'm really able to open up the most to.
Right,
So that's important. If people have a friend to share this with, that's important.
right,
There's no question that when you talk to other people who've lost children, there's a certain communication understanding that's different than other people.
yeah,
So, so I do try to make myself available to people because I know people are able to relate to me since I'm able to relate to the situation to some degree, even though every situation is different, obviously, but there is a certain commonality. So I would say like that, it's so important to strengthen your male friendships. Um, do things. I like the idea of speaking about our daughter, but I don't want to impose that on anyone because
mhm,
don't feel bad if you don't do that.
right, right.
I think for me it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
I love the word choice. That's what we use too. And again, that you bring us to a good point that, that's what we're here for. We've seen a community of men now develop, both as couples and as men, through our Nahama Comfort Support, through the monthly male support group, through
right.
the friendships that have gone all around the world with WhatsApp and Facebook and FaceTime and everything. They've built this relationship with each other.
I'll tell
And
you one idea that I find very helpful. A very central idea in Judaism is what's called in Hebrew, samech becholko.
mhm,
Be happy with your situation, with your portion. So I often ask people, do you have to believe in God for that? To be happy in your portion, you have to believe in God. And I believe the answer is no. No, there's the proverbial partially filled glass. Every one of us has a partially filled glass.
right,
Part of our glass is filled with whatever blessings we have, and part of our glass is empty with whatever losses we have or things we want that we don't have. We
right,
all have that. If you're alive, there's something in your glass.
right,
So that's that you don't have to believe in God for. But there's a different idea which is also connected to this, which you do need to believe in God for. And that's smech bechalko. Be happy in his particular unique portion. This is the concept in Hebrew called hashgacha pratit, divine supervision, to seal that your situation was tailor-made in some way for you. Your situation is appropriate for you. So that you cannot understand or relate to unless you believe in God. So that I do feel that there are different situations I have which are particular to me. Now, I went through this situation, and for whatever reason, I needed to go through this. Everyone has that. Um, but but the bottom line is we all have so much blessing in our life. And it's true we need to deal with the loss that's very, very pressing on us, but we should never ignore the multitude of blessings we all have in our lives. I'll tell you this amazing story I heard years and years ago. This is when I was living in New York. One Sunday, I was driving around and I was listening to talk radio, and they were discussing a particular case. At that time, there was a woman in Canada who was a quadriplegic, all four limbs she could not use.
right,
And she was petitioning the Canadian government to be allowed to end her life. And the case was working its way through the courts. There was a woman in America who was also a quadriplegic. She was trying to arrange a flight to fly to Canada to meet with the woman and talk her out of her lawsuit. Now, I don't know what happened. That I just heard of that time. But I
right,
was so struck by this. Here are these two women with amongst the most horrific challenge you could ever imagine in life. And one of them wants nothing more than to end her life, and one wants nothing more than to try to talk the other one out of it and show her the value of life.
right.
So to me, that really underlines the sense of choice and how we can look at things and focus. And I would assume that the American woman who was trying to fly to Canada, it was because it was Sameach B'Chalko. She was focusing not on what she didn't have, but what she did have. And because of that, she was able to deal with it and try to help other people.
I think that's just an amazing way to conclude today, that it takes time, right? It takes journey. You can't wake up the next day and say, okay, I'm okay. And I know what's interesting is people that have a lot of faith in God become angry at God for some time. And I always say, it's okay, you could be angry. God has a lot on his plate. He's not angry with you. And you have to be true to your emotions, but to get through this journey, and I always say, it's not linear. It goes, up and down and around, that they have to start looking at that slowly. And again, I
By the
do
way,
think
I have a
it's
chapter in my book, Dov, specifically on that, on
uh-huh,
what Judaism says about the concept of being angry. And I think people will be surprised just how open-minded, so to speak, Judaism is about this,
right.
how understanding and how accepting Judaism is about even very painful emotions that people express.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, this has been amazing, enlightening. I am sure everyone that watches this is going to want to hear more and want more. So tell me tell me the name of your book again.
Yeah. So it's
Okay,
called Pain is a Reality,
right.
Suffering is a Choice.
Okay, we're gonna have that up on our website too, and the information. And if they want to get the book, how can they get the
Right.
book?
So there's two ways of it. Obviously, you can go to a bookstore and just like any Jewish book. And I was in the States actually not so long ago. And I went to two Jewish bookstores and they still had it in stock. So I was happy to see that.
Oh, okay, good.
You can see it in the bookstores or ask them
Right.
to order it. Or they can actually order it from me directly on my jewishclarity.com website.
Okay.
That's
All
a
right.
website, jewishclarity.com. And right
Okay.
when you go on the website, there's a big box at the top, or you can order the book. You can just click on there, and then you can order it, pay online, and I'll send it right to your house.
Amazing. Amazing. So we'll have all that information for you too. And if can they email you through that website?
Definitely. Oh,
Well,
the best thing they could do it actually through there. But I'll tell
okay.
you my website. I'll tell you my email.
Okay.
That's really simple, it may be. It's
Right.
A Resnick, Aresnick at h.com.
Okay. All
But
right.
you're right. On the website itself, there is a link that you could, and I'll get those emails as well.
And you welcome questions,
Yeah,
comments,
I'm happy to.
helping.
What I tell people is I'm a slow typist. So if it takes me too long to type, I might say, you know what? Let's just talk on the phone.
Right. And
Or
WhatsApp.
through Zoom.
Everyone can
Or
talk on
WhatsApp. Yeah,
WhatsApp.
I have WhatsApp too. I'll tell
Right.
you my WhatsApp number too, by the way. I'm
Uh-huh.
I'm I'm happy to make connections with people. My
Okay.
WhatsApp number in Israel is 0587 123408.
Okay.
I'm happy to make connections with people and try and
Uh,
help in any way I
are you coming
possibly
to
can.
the States soon at all?
No, I was just there
Okay.
actually. I was there about 3 months ago.
Uh-huh.
So I don't anticipate a trip so soon.
Okay, but we will be in touch so we could see what we can do.
Right.
And you come in, and if you're in Israel, anybody going to Israel,
And and if you want to go to the hotel, Ishtar is
right.
right
It's
across from
right
the
across from
hotel.
the wall. It's a
And
magnificent place. You can
and I'm
go.
happy to try to give people a short, brief tour of the building.
Yes, a lot of times when there's a lot of, it was just Jerusalem Day, Yom Yerushalayim, they were broadcasting. A lot of times you could see a chateau, you could go on uh, their website, the
Right.
hotel cam. I'm gonna be there the end of July, so we will definitely get to meet each other. And I think this has been such an important program. I love, that, I've read a lot of your book. You gave me a copy. I've read a lot of it. I think it's so important. I think it's so important to have this conversation with you, a man who has gone through this journey, and to continue to share this and for both men and women to understand. Because sometimes so many of them come to us, it's such a fresh loss, it just happened. To
Right.
really see how somebody, as we say, you really put the beautiful memory, the beautiful life of your daughter Rivka into your family life and have been able to
Yes.
move through it. And you really are an inspiration. We could sit and talk all the time. But thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you very much for the journey and for the conversation. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to help a lot of the the men and the women out there.
Yes, and we'll definitely continue. Thank you.
Okay, be well, and I wish you have a wonderful holiday of Shavuot.
That's true. Okay.
But by the time they see it, they'll be after Shavuot. But okay.